The Harry Potter films changed and removed a lot from the books that they were adapting, and fans often share their disappointment that we didn't get Winky, or Ludo Bagman, or Voldemort's backstory, or the Death Day Party. But there's one major change that I am probably the most annoyed by, but I don't feel like it gets mentioned all that much. It's certainly not usually in the conversation with those other things I just mentioned, and that is the battle at the Department of Mysteries at the end of the Order of the Phoenix. And I think the reason we don't hear people complain about this very much is because the film scene is still pretty good. Probably the best battle sequence in maybe all of Harry Potter, particularly when we get to the Dumbledore against Voldemort part of the battle. But before Dumbledore arrives, the battle for the Department of Mysteries is nothing compared to what it could have been if they just adapted the book more accurately. And as somebody who has made a lot of videos over the past few months talking about the Harry Potter TV show reboot, I'd be a fool if I didn't say that them doing the battle accurately to the book is maybe the thing I'm most excited about for the TV adaptation. Granted, I don't want to have to wait 5 seasons for something to get really excited about, but to explain why I want it so much, let's jump into just how perfect the battle is in the books and how the films let it down. So I think the Department of Mysteries might be the coolest location in all of Harry Potter. It's this weird section of the Ministry that houses some of the Wizarding World's most bizarre and dangerous magical experiments. And the way we experience this place is totally different between the book and the film, and these differences completely change how the battle feels. So in the book, the Department of Mysteries is basically a maze of strange, creepy rooms. And after going through that black door that Harry has been dreaming about all year, the gang find themselves in this circular entrance chamber that actively messes with them. The walls spin after each door closes, deliberately confusing anyone who's trying to find their way around the department. Hermione even has to mark the doors of the chambers they've already checked out, just to stop them completely losing track of things. And this little detail immediately creates so much tension. Like, the place itself feels hostile, right? Almost alive, and like it's working against our group of heroes from the moment they step inside. But the film skips this confusing entrance entirely. Harry and his friends just sort of walk through the door straight into the Hall of Prophecies. And we as an audience completely lose that moment of like, where the hell are we? And that feeling that they're somewhere they really shouldn't be. Like in the books, kind of gives an Area 51 kind of vibe, somewhere the teenagers are completely out of their depth. But the film just kind of wants to get to the action really quickly, and it loses that unsettling vibe that makes the book so much more memorable. And what's more disappointing about the film is how it completely cuts out our tour through the department and all of its fascinating rooms. Like in the book, before we get to the Hall of Prophecies, Harry and his friends, they wander through several mysterious chambers, right? There's the time room with shelves upon shelves of time turners. There's a creepy bell jar with this hummingbird who keeps aging backwards and forwards. There's the brain room with this tank of floating brains with trailing memories around them like ribbons. And there's this space chamber as well with like floating planets. And here's the thing, all of these rooms aren't just cool to look at. They're not just interesting with quirky magic things going on. They foreshadow what's coming next. Almost everything that they notice during this exploration comes back into play during the battle. The bell jar is going to fall on a Death Eater and make their head regress into a baby head while he's trying to chase Harry and kill him. The floating brains are going to attack Ron, and the film misses this incredible setup to raise the stakes and build the tension and foreshadow what could have been a really interesting and exciting and chaotic and unpredictable battle. Each room establishes the Department of Mysteries as a place where the normal rules don't apply. They create this otherworldly feeling that perfectly sets up the fight to come. This isn't just dueling in a hallway. It is fighting in a place where reality itself is unstable and dangerous. Think, I don't know, like the mirror dimension in Doctor Strange, or Inception when the world itself starts to flip and bend in on itself. How much more interesting are battles in places like that than just guns shooting each other? Because that's actually a really big criticism that the Harry Potter films get, right? The magical duels are void of creativity. They're essentially just gunfights with coloured lightning. And this battle was the perfect opportunity to flip that on its head. And it does it a little bit when Dumbledore and Voldemort fight at the end of the Order of the Phoenix, but that's just like a small drop in the ocean of what could have been. The movie strips so much of this creativity away, right? Reducing the Department of Mysteries to basically 2 locations, the Hall of Prophecies and the Death Chamber with the Veil. And don't get me wrong, they both look incredible on screen, but we lose that sense of the department as this vast, mysterious complex filled with unpredictable magic. And this difference really matters when the battle kicks off. Like in the book, The various rooms become battlegrounds with their weird, magical properties affecting everything that happens with the fighting. The time runes, broken time turners, the brain tank becoming dangerous, space chambers, strange gravity. It all impacts people during the fight. In the exploration phase, lets the book build tension, right? As Harry and his friends move deeper through the department, there's this growing feeling of dread, like they're being pulled into this trap. Film, in its rush to get to the action, loses this building of tension and swaps it out for this more straightforward confrontation. Basically, the movies just treat the Department of Mysteries like another cool-looking place, right? While the book presents it as almost a character of its own. It's mysterious, it's dangerous, and it's impossible to fully understand. People have criticized this chapter for being hard to follow, but I think it's kind of supposed to be. And that difference completely changes how the battle feels when it all kicks off. So Harry and his friends finally reach the Hall of Prophecies, and this is where the book starts to diverge from the film even more dramatically, right? The film jumps pretty much straight into action, but the book gives us this incredible standoff, and it shows us so much about the characters before they start to fight. So in the book, Harry has found the prophecy with his name on it, and then Lucius Malfoy emerges from the shadows with a bunch of Death Eaters, demanding that Harry hands it over to him. And what follows isn't just a quick exchange of 2 or 3 statements before spells start flying everywhere. It's this tense, drawn-out confrontation that lets Harry really show how much he's grown as a character. The character of Harry gets criticised in this book a lot for just being angry and moody all the time. Like, granted, that's his PTSD after watching Cedric die in the Goblet of Fire, but moments like this before the battle kicks off really show that actually he is still growing and maturing despite being a moody teenager who's going through a lot of trauma. When Bellatrix threatens to torture Ginny if Harry doesn't just hand over the prophecy, his response is pure bravery. He steps in front of her and he tells Bellatrix she'll have to smash the prophecy to get to any of them. This moment where Harry puts himself between his friends and danger isn't in the film at all, and it's such a perfect character beat for him. Even better is that Harry then smack talks Bellatrix when she goes ballistic because he says Voldemort's name. Harry trolls her by pointing out that her beloved Voldemort is a half-blood, just like him. And this isn't just Harry being sassy, a little bit maybe, but it shows his growth, it shows his confidence. He's also fully aware that he needs to stall in this situation, but he also fully understands here the hypocrisy at the heart of the Death Eaters' ideology, right? And it's a great callback to something that Ron says to him in the Chamber of Secrets, which is where the blood purity storyline really starts, right? Ron tells Harry, most wizards these days are half-blood anyways. If we hadn't married muggles, we'd have died out. And little moments like this really tie some of these subplots and threads and these cultural moments from the wizarding world all into the main plot. But the film cuts almost all of this incredible dialogue and tension building completely. Movie Harry seems almost passive, while book Harry is actively stalling, trying to protect his friends while showing real leadership. Then there's the character development for Neville that we completely lose in the films as well. In the book, the Death Eaters mock his parents, and Neville goes berserk with rage and has to be physically restrained by the rest of the DA. Well, it's not the rest of the DA, it's not like Zachariah Smith is there, you know, Ginny and Luna and stuff. But it's this incredible character moment that we get, showing Neville's growth from the timid boy we met in The Philosopher's Stone to who he is now, coming into his own. The film, on the other hand, barely seems to acknowledge Neville's personal connection to Bellatrix and the other Death Eaters who tortured his parents into insanity. And so we lose that character moment for him. The Death Eaters themselves are way more distinct and interesting in this part of the book too. Like, Bellatrix is obviously memorable in both versions, thanks to Helena Bonham Carter's incredible performance, right? But in the book, we get to see way more of their personalities. Lucius is calculating and cold, trying to manipulate Harry. Bellatrix is unhinged and fanatical. Dolohov is silently menacing and really creative with how he fights. In the film, other than Lucius and Bellatrix, the rest of them are basically just masked goons, right? The typical nameless cannon fodder that you get in the background of like superhero films or spy films. People who are just there to make up the numbers and to take a bullet or two so we don't lose the main characters or the main villains. What makes the book version so great is that it gives us this perfect blend of character development and rising tension before the spells start to fly. We see Harry's growth as a leader, we see Neville's emotional connection to the fight, we see the dynamics between the Death Eaters themselves themselves and between the Death Eaters and Harry's group. This standoff really raises the stakes by making it personal for so many of the characters, not just Harry. And so by the time the actual fight breaks out, we are fully invested in every character's personal stakes in the battle. The film seems to move too quickly to establish any of these connections, focusing instead on getting to the visual spectacle of the battle itself. And it's exciting to watch, for sure, but without these character moments, it lacks that emotional resonance that makes the book version so standout and so memorable for me. All of this, and we haven't even got into the battle yet. So once the spells start flying, the book and film versions of this battle could not be more different. Okay, they could be. One of them could turn into this opera by a meadow. But they're vastly different, okay? In the movies, we see mostly generic jets of light just flying back and forth. There's lots of running through the Hall of Prophecies, shelves collapsing, the Death Eaters appear in their weird smoke cloud things that they do. And visually, it's striking, okay? But it's basically just a chase scene with wands instead of guns. You swap the wands out for a gun and it's basically something you'd see in any James Bond film. But the book, it is complete and utter magical chaos, and it is incredible. It's such a ride to read it. So the book version doesn't just stay in the Hall of Prophecies. As Harry and his friends flee the Death Eaters, they get separated into different rooms throughout the Department of Mysteries, which creates multiple battlefronts happening simultaneously, but each has its own unique dangers and obstacles. It's not just about who can cast spells faster, it's about navigating these bizarre magical environments while fighting for your life. And those are the stakes, by the way. They are all under threat of death here. And the injuries the kids sustain in the book version, they're way more brutal and specific, right? Like in the film, they mostly just get knocked about a bit, right? In the book, Hermione gets hit with this mysterious purple flame curse from Dolohov that very nearly kills her. It's described as this silent streak of purple flames that cuts across her chest. And she immediately collapses. And the moment to read is genuinely terrifying, right? For a second, readers genuinely think Hermione could be dead. And the fact it's a spell that we've never seen before makes it even more frightening. Then there's what happens to Ron in the brain room. After he gets hit with some kind of confusion curse, he summons one of the brains to himself. And so it attacks him, with its tentacle-like memories wrapping around him and starting to burn into his skin. And it's this horrifically surreal moment that only works because the book set up the brain room earlier. Like, the film doesn't even attempt to include this nightmarish sequence of events. Ron has this childlike wonder where he wants to see what happens with the brain, and then when it comes to him, he's terrified, and that childlike wonder turns into childlike fear. Ginny gets her ankle broken, Neville gets his nose smashed and can't even pronounce spells properly, Luna is knocked unconscious at one point. The book does not pull any punches, showing that these are all still just kids who haven't even finished school yet, fighting against very experienced dark wizards, and they are getting demolished. Like, as a unit, they're holding their own, but they're not outmatching them. They're not even equal to the Death Eaters. I think what makes this battle so incredible in the books is how the weird magical elements throughout the Department of Mysteries are at the center of everything. And the reader is familiar with it all because of the way the group explored the department before the fight broke out. We saw a bell jar earlier, which had a hummingbird constantly cycling through life, from egg to old age, back to egg, over and over again. And so when the battle reaches this chamber, Harry and Neville knock it onto a Death Eater whose head regresses to a baby's head while he's chasing them. The battle just gets so wild and unpredictable and interesting that you genuinely have no idea what's going to happen next or where it's going to end up. There's this incredible moment, right, where Neville can't even speak the spell names properly because of his broken nose. So he just physically stabs a Death Eater in the eye with his wand. I'm actually not even sure if it's his wand. I think his has broken by this point. And it's this brutal, desperate act that shows how chaotic and physical this fight has become. Nobody is just standing there trading beautiful spell work. They are scrambling and they are improvising and they are doing whatever they can to survive. But the film version is much more sanitized. We don't see the extent of the injuries. We don't see a creative use of the environment beyond just knocking down shelves of prophecies. And we don't really see the desperation of the kids as they are overwhelmed and outnumbered. The Death Eaters in the movie seem almost incompetent, right? Unable to capture 6 teenagers despite outnumbering them and being vastly more trained and experienced. We're supposed to believe this is not only Voldemort's best, but the same Death Eaters who almost won the First Wizarding War. In the book, they methodically take down the kids one by one until it's only Harry and Neville left standing. But by reducing the battle to basically a chase through the Hall of Prophecies, the film misses out on all of these creative possibilities that the department's weird rooms can offer. The book uses every element it established during that exploration phase, turning those curious magical artifacts into weapons and obstacles in a fight that feels dangerous and unpredictable and exciting at every turn. First phase of the battle isn't just cool magic. It shows the real cost of fighting against much more powerful opponents, and it uses the unique setting to create a wizard battle unlike anything else in the series. So now the second phase of the battle, when the Order arrive, isn't quite as different in the films, but there are a few things that it still really misses that could elevate things that are in the book. So in the film, the action moves quickly to the Death Chamber with the Veil in the middle, and that's when the Order of the Phoenix arrives to save the day, and it's a pretty straightforward rescue. The adults show up, it's a more evenly matched fight. But in the book, things get way more desperate before the Order even arrives. Most of Harry's friends have been injured or incapacitated, and so it's down to just Neville and Harry facing off against multiple Death Eaters. And Neville can't even cast a spell because his nose is broken, so he's trying to say stupefy, and he's saying stupefy. So in the book, we get this incredible moment where Harry is trying to carry Neville, who can't walk properly, and protect the prophecy, and still fight and defend himself. He is literally struggling his way through, dragging his injured friends while being chased by Death Eaters. And it's this perfect visual moment of Harry refusing to leave anybody behind and refusing to give up, even when it puts him in more danger. And then there's the moment where Neville gets caught, right? And Bellatrix starts torturing him with the Cruciatus Curse right in front of Harry. And it's not just any torture scene, it's specifically meaningful because this is how Neville's parents were driven insane from this exact curse by this exact witch. And the book makes that connection explicit, and it is gut-wrenching to read. But the film barely touches on this connection. Just like in the standoff, we lose this powerful emotional layer to things. One of the wildest parts of the book battle, by the way, that's completely missing from the film, is how brutal it gets. Everyone is desperate, right? Wands get broken and stepped on, people are bleeding. At one point, a Death Eater grabs Harry around the neck and nearly chokes him to death until Neville stabs him in the eye with Hermione's wand. It is raw, and it is this desperate kind of fighting that we don't really see through any of the rest of the series. And the prophecy's destruction happens differently too, right? In the film, Lucius has it, and then he drops it when the Order arrives and he gets punched by Sirius. But in the book, the chaos of the battle after the Order have already arrived and are dueling the Death Eaters, we see Harry and Neville sort of limping, trying to get away from the battle, while the environment around them is getting smashed to pieces, getting hit by mist and rebounded curses. So something they were going to stand on completely gives way, and they end up dropping the prophecy. And Neville accidentally kicks it into the air, and then it smashes on the ground, but it's completely unnoticed by anybody but those two. And it's this almost anticlimactic moment, right? This thing that everyone's been fighting over breaks in a completely random way and nobody really notices. There's something almost darkly funny about it, right? The prophecy being destroyed not by some dramatic moment, but a clumsy accident. I do feel like the Order's arrival and the way they battle the Death Eaters once they get there is really well done. Like, it's not terribly different from the books in that respect, and it's visually striking, and despite all of the moving parts, you know, Tonks and Mad Eye and Sirius and Lupin all fighting against different Death Eaters, with the kids trying to escape at the same time, there's a lot going on, but the film makes it really easy to follow. Let's talk about Sirius's death first, right? In both versions, Bellatrix kills him, but how it happens is completely different. So in the film, she hits him with the killing curse, that familiar green flash of light, and he falls back into the Veil. It's clear and straightforward that he has died. Even if the Veil didn't kill him, the killing curse would have. You know, it's definitely sad, right? The slow motion, silent screams of Daniel Radcliffe, they hit hard. But if we compare it to Sirius's death in the books, things are more ambiguous, just like the entire rest of the battle. Instead of getting hit by a killing curse, Sirius is hit by an unnamed spell, and it knocks him back into the archway that we don't fully understand. So what makes it so devastating is that Harry doesn't really understand what's happened. He thinks Sirius is just gonna appear from the other side of the archway. It's only when Lupin grabs Harry to stop him from running after Sirius that the horrible truth sinks in. We get this gut-wrenching moment, right, where Harry keeps shouting that they need to get Sirius, they need to rescue him, they need to bring him back, completely unable to process that his godfather is gone. The book gives us Harry's denial in real time, this raw refusal to accept what just happened. And then there's the Dumbledore versus Voldemort duel, which is done fantastically in the film. The visual spectacle of their magical battle is amazing on screen, like the water serpent and the glass shards and the fire whip. It's beautifully done. The book version has a few details that make it more impressive, like when Dumbledore shows up, he doesn't just start fighting Voldemort, he, first of all, pretty much single-handedly immobilizes all the Death Eaters. And it just shows how incredibly powerful he is. The Order had them divided and couldn't quite do it. Dumbledore comes in and basically mops them up. Takes out a room full of dark wizards without breaking a sweat. And then he turns his attention to Voldemort. And it's this perfect demonstration of why Voldemort fears Dumbledore so much. One of my big criticisms of the Harry Potter stories, books and films, is that we are told a lot more than we are shown, like about how evil Voldemort is, but also about how Dumbledore is the only wizard Voldemort ever feared. So getting these moments where we see it, where we are shown it rather than just told it, incredible. The book also makes it clear that Dumbledore isn't trying to kill Voldemort. He is trying to contain him and stall him until the Ministry officials arrive so they can see proof that Voldemort has returned and start arming the wizarding world against him. So Dumbledore is basically fighting with one hand tied behind his back, and he is still winning, which adds this whole other layer to their duel that the film just doesn't capture. And next comes Voldemort's possession of Harry, which both versions handle very differently. Truth be told, I don't love the visuals we get in the film to symbolize what's going on in Harry's mind. It feels kind of like a student film, like the green screen of Voldemort and then the montage of memories. Like, I know some people love it and it's personal preference, but for me, it feels too on the nose. The book version feels more internal and maybe more powerful. Dumbledore watches helplessly as Harry's body is possessed, right? And Harry's thoughts are entirely about just wanting to die so that he can be reunited with Sirius again. It's his grief as well as his love, not just for his friends, but specifically his longing to be reunited with Sirius. That's ultimately what drives Voldemort out. And that is so much darker and more emotionally complex than what the films give us. And after the battle, the books give us this immediate emotional fallout, right? Harry smashing up Dumbledore's office in a rage, screaming about how unfair it is that Sirius died. We also see Harry processing what the prophecy means, realizing he either has to become a murderer or be murdered. And I feel like these moments after the battle are just as important as the battle itself, and the film doesn't do enough justice for them. And I think what makes the book's conclusion so powerful is that it doesn't just treat the battle as an action sequence. It's a deeply personal, life-changing event for Harry. It's the moment he loses his last chance at a real family. It's when he finally learns why Voldemort tried to kill him as a baby, and it's when he has to fight the reality that he's the only one who can end it all. The film captures the spectacle of the climax, right? But it misses so much of the emotional depth that makes the book sequence truly unforgettable. And that's why I love the battle in the book so much, right? Even though the fight in the films is good, I really hope that when we get the TV show, it gives us everything from the book. And if you want to hear more of my opinions about the Harry Potter books and films, I responded to some of your Harry Potter hot takes, not you personally, but just viewers in general, in this video, including responding to somebody who said that Umbridge wasn't that bad. So you might want to watch this video next.